Good afternoon, everyone. So the topic of the session I have been invited to give is Operational Transformation Blueprint for 5G. A bit about myself. My name is Abhilekh Bhardwaj, around 25 years of experience across IT and telecoms. I've been at 3UK for the last couple of years, and I'm accountable for operation strategy for our service operations and assurance function. At 3UK, our vision is to deliver better connectivity every day for every customer. And there are quite a few statistics to share around it. And our network is really critical to the UK. It's part of the critical network national infrastructure. We carry around 28% of UK's mobile data traffic, covering more than 90% of UK population. Our 5G population coverage is 54%, which is fantastic. Our customers use 2.2 times more data than average UK users, which is, I think, it's a fantastic achievement. The median download speed on 5G for us is been 285 Mbps. We have 17,400 mass sites across the UK and counting as we speak. We are the largest 5G spectrum holder in the UK, which is significant to our business operations. We cover 400 towns and cities by 5G with around 300 sites and counting. And over the last few years, we have been clocking the largest year-on-year growth for active users, which is a great achievement. Before I dig deeper into the subject, I just wanted to clarify the scope of operational transformation. I think because the clarity on the scope of operational transformation is vital. For me, the term operational transformation basically means changing how we run operations while we continue to generate value through technology and business cycles, managing disruption and increased regulation. So when we talk about operational transformation for 5G, what gets missed out is it's not just about 5G. It's about all the technologies across networks and IT that we have to manage. And that's the responsibility or accountability we have in operations. So given the complexity and the enormity of the task in terms of transformation, what this basically needs is a framework to simplify the operational complexity and a workforce with the skills to capture the opportunities and value available from digital and analytics technologies. So that's the meaning or the scope of operational transformation that I would like to cover today. The second part of the session, the title of the session was 5G. So what are the imperatives of 5G? Well, we can look at this as a shiny new technology, but then the ops reality needs to be also kept in mind. So just a few words about 5G. 5G, it's a major step in our network capabilities across all domains, starting with RAN, so massive MIMO, spectrum, additional spectrum, millimeter wave, small cells, densification, in-building deployment, and so on. So these are all the new characteristics of that 5G brings. The standalone core has a container-based architecture, distributed cloud, including edge to suit the edge computing use cases. The transport has been evolved and is still in the process of evolving even further and optimized based on software-defined networking and automation. Multi-vendor ecosystem. It's a different multi-vendor ecosystem than we have had ever in the past. An example of this is the CI/CD pipelines that will power our delivery and deployment, continuous integration and continuous delivery. Network slicing, I'm sure everyone is aware of this. Automation and orchestration more integrated than before. That works because we have seen some examples of where it doesn't work or hasn't worked in the past. And all of this is underpinned by an evolved tool set for OSS and much more, which I haven't really captured here because of shortage of time. Now, what this basically means is operating 5G will require different tools, skills, and operational capabilities to support the new business models. And some of the examples are cloud gaming, augmented reality, virtual reality, autonomous machines, autonomous cars, drones, etc., private networks, and fixed wireless access. Now, if you look at this, one thing that becomes very clear is we need a holistic approach which goes beyond technology. The risk here is that we operate technology for technology's sake, and that's the thing that I would like to avoid as part of operational transformation. A bit about, I think it's important to know what the demand drivers are. Where does the demand come from for operations? Without understanding the demand and continuously engaging with the demand drivers, it's not possible to transform in a sustainable manner. And there are 4 areas where the demand comes from. The customer tells us what to do, as simple as that. This is reflected in various surveys, the net promoter scores, the feedback that we get from the customers, including the social media. So the expectations of the customer need to be kept in mind, and that's where the demand for operations come from, including for 5G. The business growth imperatives, the new products and services being launched, the role of operations needs to be kept in mind, and it's evolving as we speak. Technology evolution, and 5G is part of or is an example of that. But it's not just about 5G; it's about all other things that need to be catered for as part of the technology evolution, the legacy evolution, etc. And then finally, regulatory and security, as some of us have seen in the UK at least. It's an evolving landscape, and it's hard to keep up with all the evolution that we have seen in the last two to 3 years. It's had a significant impact on operations, not just technology, but also how we operate and how we achieve the desired state when it comes to security of our networks. So that's good, but the supply levers that we have at our disposal, because we can't really control the demand as much as we can control the supply levers. So we are the owners of our operating model. We design and define the partner landscape. We make those decisions. We can control the OPEX and CAPEX to some extent, and we can decide what kind of people do we want in our operations team. But the operations transformation blueprint needs to connect the supply levers with the operational objectives, because as you can see, the long-term objectives need to be kept in mind, and they need to be aligned to the business objectives. And that's what we do at 3UK. So what you see on the screen are the 5 key long-term objectives that we have, which is to ensure that we deliver reliable operations, effectiveness, we develop our people, we protect our information and assets, and we deliver efficiency as we go along. The question here is, which areas should we focus to help achieve these long-term objectives? How do we achieve these long-term objectives? And that requires us to go and dig deeper. So our operational transformation blueprint is basically a framework which connects the demand drivers with the long-term objectives, and basically lays out on the table what the strategic focus areas are. So as you can see on the screen, this blueprint mentions the long-term objectives and connects them to the strategic focus areas. So starting from the top, customer experience management. How do we continuously monitor and enhance our reporting of customer experience from an operations perspective? Service reliability engineering. How do we ensure that our services are improved from a reliability perspective? What are the SLIs, the service level indicators and service level objectives? And what do they mean? What do we need from our managed service partners from an SLA to deliver those SLI and SLOs? Real-time observability, we need to know what's going on in our network at any given point in time. And that demands observability. And it drives that demand for observability of different parameters, different metrics in real time rather than weeks or days that used to be the case before. 5G, as I mentioned earlier, brings new business models on the table, and the role of operations, not just from as an operator of technology, but also from a support perspective, needs to be evaluated. And that's what I meant by the holistic approach. We need to look at the role of operations in delivering private networks, in delivering fixed wireless access, in delivering cloud gaming, and so on. The next is protection of information and assets, and we need to ensure that we manage and contain risks. And this is not just technological risk, but also operational risk, to ensure that we have good control on the risks that are being introduced in our network. Business continuity is about ensuring that no matter what the disruption, we always have a plan B in place. And this is not just applicable at the business level, but we are trying to drive it down to the technology level with ensuring that we have got the RPO and the RTO in line with what we need on a per technology basis, because it may differ from technology to technology. Improving effectiveness, the strategic focus areas that form part of this to deliver this objective are, first of all, how do we optimize our managed services landscape? We need to continuously simplify that landscape. It's a complicated landscape of not just because of number of managed service partners, but also the interactions between those partners, which make it a bit complex for us to govern and lead the operations. DevOps, so we need to adopt the DevOps principles. I mentioned CI/CD. And this applies not just to 5G, but also on the IT side. OSS and tooling, as I said, evolved tool set is required for 5G. And how do we bring that to life? And this is one of the biggest challenges that we have had in operations for the last few years. And we need to ensure that we have ways and means to plug the gaps that we have, and figure out how do we do things better to deliver the user experience for the operations people. Data and insights. Enough said. There's been a lot of discussion around data today in this conference, but we need the strategy that we have is to ensure that we have good governance of data, because the quality of data determines the decision making that we do at the end of the day. From an efficiency perspective, we are always ensuring that with the help of our managed service partners, we deliver the operational efficiency. And this includes things like energy efficiency, which ultimately helps us deliver financial efficiency, which is basically management of OPEX and CAPEX and optimization of our cost drivers. And finally, development of people. We can't leave people behind. None of the other strategy building blocks will be delivered unless we develop our people, our skill sets, and their capabilities. So that's the overall operational transformation blueprint. Now, suffice to say that none of these building blocks exist in silos. They need to interwork with each other. They need to be interlocked. Because, for example, when trying to simplify a managed service landscape, it has a direct relation to the financial efficiency strategy building block, and so on. So the emphasis here is to ensure that we have got not only SBB owners who owns different building blocks, but also they interact with each other to bring those efficiencies. So a bit about executing the transformation. I believe that there is no silver bullet to ops transformation when it comes to execution. We are yet to figure out an automated way of executing transformation. And what that brings is a kind of an insight that we probably need to fuse what works for us from different angles. So one thing that has worked for us and for wider industry players is agile, right? So we are using a bit of agile approach, safe agile, for executing this transformation. And how it works is the blueprint that I showed in the previous slide. We the initiatives out of each of the strategy building blocks, they get identified. There is an interlocking between those initiatives owners that is in place, and each of those initiatives then lead to epics, and each of the epics contain some stories. So as you can see, in a simple manner, the transformation, which is actually composed of many transformations under each of the initiatives, gets delivered, and the value that gets delivered, it gets delivered over years, months, or weeks, depending on which at what level of granularity you're looking. So, what are the key takeaways? I would say the lessons learned from our experience in this area is, first of all, we need to simplify the operational complexity, especially technological. There is a tendency to operate technology for technology's sake, and that's healthy maybe in the short term, but definitely in the long term, it kind of takes away the bandwidth that is required to be spent on the business side of things, on the non-technological aspects, especially in operations. And what we have learned is we need to adopt, customize, and evolve the blueprint aligned to the business objectives. As the business objectives evolve, the blueprint needs to be updated if required. Also, using a building block approach makes it easier for us to allocate it to different owners within operations. So it's not about forming a team which is dedicated for operations. It's about embedding strategy, embedding the operational transformation in the entire operations team. And that building block approach ensures that it gets done while still leaving room for interlocks and interaction between those building blocks. It's also used for communication. We use it for simplifying our strategic communications to our stakeholders. The second bit that, based on my experience, that's been one of the biggest learnings is scope. Often it's when we look at things like customer experience management, DevOps, it's easy to kind of let the scope be unmanaged, and that's something that's to be, I would say, managed in a smart way. As a strategy coach, for example, myself, I ensure that the scope for the building blocks is correctly designed and well understood. And the way to do that, I mean, it's both art and a science. It's not really, there's no playbook for ensuring that gets done perfectly. But what I really look for is, how do I complement the skills, the character, the competence, and the experience of the ops team? And I think that's very important, because different building blocks need a different approach, and depending upon the experience and skills and character of the person leading that, or the team leading that, it varies. The third point about the execution of operational transformation is about incremental value delivery. We need to we often get or often seek something that is big, or because the word transformation sounds exciting, but we often miss out on the fact that it doesn't get delivered overnight. But at the same time, unless we deliver something, the whole journey is not as sustainable. So to ensure that the journey is sustainable and it's manageable, we need to ensure that the value gets delivered incrementally, and that's where Agile has helped us. Which basically means that we have parallel mini transformations as part of those initiatives, as I showed earlier, but they are interlocked, and they are driven from the top. Fourth point, about focusing on value and outcomes delivered in increments. And what we have ensured is that we constantly challenge ourselves on what is the value delivered, what is the outcome delivered in each increment. And this is easier said than done, because we need to, as operations team, we need to balance today's priorities with the transformational demands. And this is again one of those areas where it's It's more art and than science. Point number 5, this is probably obvious, but one of the most challenging aspects of transformation. How do we remain in lockstep with the 5G technology evolution and the other technology evolution? This basically needs continuous engagement with the internal and external stakeholders, including our technology strategy teams, our technology delivery teams, but also our managed service partners. So this basically takes this whole operations transformation beyond just the operations team and includes stakeholders who can not only contribute to deliver value, but also there's a feedback mechanism that get undertaken. Point number 6, be prepared for new discoveries. So this is very important in the sense that there is a lot of hype around transformation, but one thing that we have followed ever since we started this journey last year is that it's about progression, not of perfection. There is no silver bullet about that to delivering transformation, and this is a principle that we need to use as feedback to improve and continuously improve and evolve our transformation program itself. And finally, if we don't have the bandwidth or if we don't have the expertise, we need to augment our resources through external sources, but only if required. And my suggestion is to keep it to a minimum. And the reason for that is ultimately it's about embedment of strategy. It's not about marking a transformation program or any program done or completed, because the value doesn't get delivered by just ensuring the tool is delivered, but it's also it's supposed to be leveraged in day-to-day operations, and that is a journey which kind of practically never stops or kind of needs to evolve as we go along. So that was it from me, and if there are any questions.
I found that fascinating. Thank you very much. One of the things I picked up in your takeaway was about the team building and how you try and complement the team member's skills. And this reminded me of conversations I've had with a guy called Nathan Ott, who runs the GCI Index, which is all about team building. And he's always saying that a mistake people make is often trying to build a team out of people with the same skill sets. And he said, a classic manifestation of this is when you get your appraisal. And if you're a goalkeeper, as an analogy, being told off because your striker skills aren't great is just stupid. And yet that's what we do in corporations. And then we wonder why, So I was really encouraged by your talking about that way of complementing and extending skills within a team. I
think the reason skills building block is one of the most exciting building block as part of our operational blueprint. Yeah. It's not just about identifying a set of training courses or instructor-led trainings or online, and then sending people to those 1 or 2 days courses, and then voila, you have people who are trained or who have the skills. No, it's not about that. What we need is a much deeper analysis of skills required, and this is something which I think it needs to be looked at from multiple perspectives. In the past, we have looked at it from a technology perspective as to what are the new counters available, what are the new metrics or KPIs which are interesting. But it's not about that. It's also about how does it fit in the existing operations, and how does it complement or augment operations or disrupt even. And that is where we're spending time to ensure that not only we identify the striker skills or the goalkeeper skills, and depending upon the role, but also we do not just leave people alone to figure out, the best training available or the best way to get themselves trained. No, we need to make it easy for people to acquire those skills. And that's what we are working on as part of the skills.
I think that's probably really important, because personally, I like disruption and change, but I've realised over quite a few years, I'm in a minority, I think, because I think most people are the opposite and don't like change. So I guess that making it easy for people and helping them rather than just figure it out for yourself is a really important way of getting people engaged and progressing.
Absolutely. I think especially in telcos, where the focus is not less on technology itself and more on operationalizing the technology or monetizing the technology, the holistic nature of skills development becomes even more critical. If you look at the supply side of things when it comes to training and skills development, it's mostly focused on technology. It's technology centric, and that's where the gap is, and we are trying to fill that gap through various means. Again, progression, not perfection, because some of these things are learned best on the job, and if that's the case, then we need to be ready for it. But we need to manage that change so that we don't stress out people in the journey.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Nick says, who is funding your transformation? He says, that is it the CTO or business stakeholders? And also, how do you quantify the benefits against the costs? And by that, he means both CapEx and OpEx.
Let me take the first question. So I think it depends. So I think it depends because, for example, when it comes to tools and technology related initiatives, that's obviously funded by, from within the CTO budget. But when it comes to support of business models, that's directly funded by the business. So, for example, if we need more resources or if we need additional tools, then the funding of that is part of the business case, which is led by the business. What was the second question?
The second one is, how do you quantify the benefits? You did mention this. I think you used the word value, but also how do you quantify the benefits against the costs, both in terms of CapEx and OpEx?
I think this is one of the areas where people like to be bamboozled by big things, right? They want to see big numbers, big improvements. But what we forget is any big initiative, like I was showing earlier, is composed of many small chunks. So, we actually measure value at the lowest possible granularity possible, because otherwise it's flashy, it's impressive, but the underlying metrics are not adding up. So we look at that, so for example, we look at part of the development of strategy is what are the KPIs and metrics through which we can measure value and outcomes delivered. Yeah. And that's specific to that epic or that story. And we just focus on that. Hope that answered the question.
Okay, well, I guess it's quite a tricky thing because it's a lot of moving parts and a lot of small things that add up to a bigger thing. And also there are different timelines and all sorts of things going on. So it's quite a complex question to answer, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that the interaction between the building blocks is quite key to delivery of successful. But if there is any failure in interaction, that gets caught because it's an incremental delivery, right? At the end of every increment, we do a retrospective and figure out what we are not doing well, and we correct that.
Okay, we have another question too. Patrick asks, how easy is it to evolve your managed services service level agreements to align with your target operational strategies? So winding up your managed services SLAs.
Yeah, I think there are two parts of the answer to this question. One is it depends on the contract, right? We have with the managed service partner, because if the contract is inflexible, then it's very difficult. You have got to wait till the contract expires, or you go for a termination of the contract somehow, which is disruptive in its own, and you need to balance it against the priorities. The second is it depends on how you are taking your managed service partner along the journey. So sometimes, especially not in this company, but in my previous company at Vodafone, we saw that not everything can be written in a contract, but there are certain boundary areas where there is flexibility, and we need to explore that flexibility without breaking the business case for either party. So it's about having that strategic partnership and ensuring that the operational, the managed service partners are part of your operational transformation journey.
Okay, I'm sorry to say we're out of time. That was a really instructive and interesting session. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.